Before we begin, I want you to promise me one thing. Watch this until the very end. Because the final touch, the third one, is the one no man forgets. It's not what you think, and it's not what he expects. But it's the one that will make him see you, not just as someone he desires, but as the one his unconscious has been waiting for. Let's begin. There is a kind of touch that never meets the skin. A gesture too subtle for the conscious mind to register, yet potent enough to stir the ocean beneath. Freud would call this the language of the unconscious, that vast, unlit corridor where symbols replace speech and desire slips through the bars of repression like smoke. A woman walks into a room and doesn't say a word. Her presence alone changes the air. He notices but cannot explain why. It's not the curve of her hip or the shine of her hair. It's something deeper. She has touched him without touching him. That is the first of the three touches, the unseen one. It is not physical. It is psychic, symbolic, a touch born of energy, restraint, nuance. And it is this, precisely this, that begins to dismantle the defenses of a man who does not yet know he is looking for someone to truly see him. Freud argued that most of our behavior is not governed by logic, but by the unconscious, that murky realm of repressed memories, unspoken grief, and unresolved longing. And men, especially those who appear emotionally restrained, often live in silent negotiation with that realm. The first touch, her stillness, her subtlety, offers him an unspoken invitation to feel. He doesn't yet know that she reminds him of something, of someone. The sound of her voice echoes the tenderness he never received or the safety he once had and then lost. He begins to associate her with the unmet needs of his inner boy, the boy who learned early that needing is dangerous. This touch is not seductive in the way he expects. It does not demand or perform. It allows silence, allows awkwardness, allows space for him to project his buried wants. She becomes momentarily a mirror. And mirrors unsettle the unconscious. They reveal what has been hidden. He is used to women reaching for him, wanting from him, needing validation, presence, answers. But she is still. She waits. She doesn't fill the silence with noise. She doesn't chase. Her lack of pursuit disrupts the script he knows by heart. That disruption, that psychic interruption, is the beginning of fascination. Freud believed that every romantic attachment contains a trace of transference, the redirection of feelings from one figure to another. A man does not fall for a woman in the present. He falls for the unconscious echo she awakens within him. The unseen touch awakens that echo. Her eyes linger longer than necessary, but only just. Her voice drops slightly when she says his name. She doesn't lean in. She stays back. She allows the desire to stretch, to simmer, to ache. He finds himself wondering, why her? Why now? This is not manipulation. It is awareness. She is not pretending to be something she's not. She is being exactly who she is. Only she understands that intimacy is not born in what is done, but in what is felt, in what is barely there. A man who has guarded himself for years will not respond to pressure. But he will remember the pause between her sentences. The warmth in her gaze that didn't ask for anything. The absence of demand. That absence feels like a balm. Like home. He starts thinking of her when he doesn't mean to. During meetings, while driving, in the spaces between distractions. He begins assigning meaning to her gestures. He starts imagining their conversations before they happen. He dreams about her, but not sexually, not yet. Emotionally, she appears in places from his childhood, next to people who are long gone. This is the power of the unseen touch. It bypasses the body and goes straight to the psyche. It creates familiarity before intimacy. Safety before seduction. Freud might say she has activated his ID, that primal part of him that wants but doesn't always know what it wants. But more than that, she's offered a bridge between his ID and his ego, between impulse and identity. She sees the space between who he is and who he fears he is, and she doesn't rush to close it. At dinner, she lets silences settle like snow. She speaks slowly, not performatively, authentically. She doesn't use words to impress. She uses them to reveal. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for him to feel her, not just hear her. He finds himself opening up, not in dramatic declarations, in small admissions. He talks about his father, about work stress, about a childhood friend who vanished one summer. He surprises himself. She doesn't rush to comfort him. She listens. That too is a touch, the act of listening as though every word matters. Her presence disarms him because it isn't hungry. It's whole. It doesn't compete with his masculinity. It doesn't punish his silence. It coexists with it. He begins to realize that she is not trying to be chosen. She has already chosen herself. This changes everything. Most men don't consciously crave emotional intimacy because most have never tasted it safely. The first taste often startles them. But something in him is shifting. Not dramatically, not overnight. Quietly. Like a door left ajar in a room he forgot was there. He starts telling his friends about her, not boastfully, but curiously. He starts remembering things she said, things she wore, the way she paused when he asked about her past. He realizes she never answered that question fully. And now he wants to know. He wants to understand her, not possess her. That distinction marks the beginning of emotional attachment. Freud would say this is when the unconscious begins to transfer its longing for wholeness onto the new object. Not because she completes him, but because her presence allows him to complete something within himself. In the weeks that follow, he looks for her in places she's not. A certain scent reminds him of her. A song she never played suddenly sounds like her mood. He wonders if she thinks of him too, and that wondering becomes a kind of obsession. Gentle, persistent. He doesn't know yet that he's falling. Not in the conventional sense, but in the psychological one. He's being drawn inward toward a connection that feels inexplicably vital, as though knowing her will teach him something about himself. And it will, because that is what the unseen touch does. It awakens the forgotten, the unspoken, the unhealed. It is not a tactic. It is an initiation. Into himself. Through her. By the end of the month, he is no longer looking at other women the same way. Not because he has committed to her, but because his perception has changed. What once attracted him now feels loud. What once entertained now feels shallow. He doesn't tell her all this. He doesn't need to. She already knows. She sees the shift in his body language, in the way he lingers longer in the doorway, in the way his messages carry a softness they didn't before. He is still himself, but slightly different. Warmer, less guarded, more attentive. The unseen touch has done its work. It has begun. The second touch is the one he can't feel until it's gone. It is absence. Not withdrawal, not rejection, but absence with intention. The pause between two notes in a melody. The stillness before a wave breaks. This is the kind of space that makes a man wonder, ache, reach. Freud called it the return of the repressed, and what is more repressed in modern intimacy than the hunger for depth? She doesn't text him first. Not out of pride, but out of awareness. She knows the value of pacing the emotional current. In their last conversation, she lingered in her goodbye. She let her voice fall slightly, like the last light before dusk. It wasn't cold. It wasn't clingy. It was open-ended. A comma, not a period. He notices her quiet. Not immediately. At first, it's background noise, the silence of someone simply busy. But as the hours stretch into a day, then another, a restlessness grows in him. He checks his phone. Then again. He scrolls their old messages, looking for a thread to pull, a memory to revisit. She has left him a space to fill, and now he is filling it with her. This is not a manipulation. It's a psychological reset. Freud believed that in the absence of stimulus, the unconscious compensates with fantasy. When she steps back, she activates this principle. His mind begins to create her, or rather, project onto her. Desire deepens in the silence. Longing grows in the waiting. This is instruction number 1. Touch him through absence. Create space for him to imagine you. She is not punishing him. She is restoring the polarity that modern romance too often flattens with availability. Her absence isn't rejection, it's an invitation. An echo of a presence too meaningful to be casual. The male psyche, shaped by both evolutionary drive and emotional conditioning, often equates availability with predictability. Predictability with safety. Safety in excess with disinterest. Freud noted that the ego resists too much comfort. It craves stimulation, even risk. Her absence introduces risk, but of the beautiful kind, the risk of feeling more than expected. He starts to wonder, did I say something wrong? Is she losing interest? The uncertainty discomforts him, but it also stirs him. The silent space forces him to reckon with what she stirs inside him. She's not just a presence anymore. She's an idea, an imprint. She doesn't post on social media either. No stories. No look at me selfies. She lets herself vanish, not to punish, but to protect her mystery. And this mystery becomes magnetic. He talks about her at lunch with a friend, casually at first. Then, with more focus. He's not sure what he misses exactly. He just knows something about her lingers. Her silence has become a presence. She is offering him a gift, the chance to feel his own yearning. So many women overcompensate for emotional absence in men by overgiving, overtexting, overappearing. She does the opposite. She withholds, but gently, softly, like a tide returning to itself. Freud emphasized that desire is always rooted in lack. That which is absent becomes the object of fixation. She understands this. And so, she steps back, not as punishment but as permission. For him to feel what he hasn't been allowed to feel, hunger. He begins dreaming about her again. But now the dreams are layered. Sometimes she appears in a doorway and doesn't speak. Other times she's seated across from him, but unreachable. These dreams are his unconscious attempting to close the gap. She's become a symbol, not just a woman, but something more. The mind fills in what the senses lack. This is the genius of absence. It amplifies subtle gestures into significance. Her last look, he replays it. The inflection in her voice, he hears it again, this time with more meaning. Absence stretches a moment into memory. His desire sharpens. He begins to reach, not desperately but intentionally. A message. Hey, just thinking about you. She doesn't reply immediately. When she does, it's warm but not rushed. He can feel that she's not angry. She's just not waiting. That difference disarms him. She lets a few more days pass. Not to provoke, but to regulate. To give his unconscious time to associate her with depth, not convenience. When they meet again, it's different. He watches her more closely. Asks deeper questions. He's not trying to impress. He's trying to understand. She is no longer a distraction. She's a disruption of his pattern. Of his numbing. Of his predictability. Freud said that neurosis often stems from the inability to tolerate uncertainty. In love, this manifests as control, needing to define, label, secure. She does none of this. Her absence taught him to sit in uncertainty. And now, he trusts her more for it. He tells her over coffee that she intrigues him, that he thought about her more than he expected. She smiles, not triumphantly, but softly. She knows that what he's really saying is, "You touched me without touching me." And that is the point. Absence is not emptiness. It is form, is the shape of longing. When used with integrity and care, it becomes a sacred touch, one that opens the unconscious and stirs the soul. Her silence was never about withholding. It was about reminding him that depth requires space. That connection is not built in constant presence, but in the meaning we assign to absence. He leans in now more than before, looks at her when she speaks, asks questions that matter. He's no longer entertained, he's engaged. He realizes he doesn't just want her attention. He wants her presence. That shift, from wanting to be distracted to wanting to connect, is the mark of emotional readiness. It is what separates attraction from attachment, fantasy from depth. And all of it was touched into motion by what she didn't do, by who she didn't try to be, by the absence she allowed to stretch between them, long enough for him to feel the truth of what she meant, not just in his body, but in his mind, and more importantly, in his unconscious. The second touch is not a hand on skin. It's not flirtation or clever timing. It's the trembling beneath the surface of truth, the moment she chooses not to impress, but to reveal. Vulnerability, Freud would say, is the gateway to the unconscious because it breaks through repression. And repression is the fortress most men live behind. She could have told him what he wanted to hear. Played into charm, ease, lightness. But that night, as they walked through the soft hum of closing streets, she said something else. She said, "I get overwhelmed sometimes and I hide." Then silence. Not filled, not justified, just left there open and raw. He looked at her. Something shifted. She didn't rush to rescue the moment. Didn't laugh it off. She stayed. Present. That is when he felt it. A touch that moved beneath the surface, unexpected and deep. She had given him something sacred, her truth. This is instruction number 2. Touch him with vulnerability. Reveal something real, and allow it to remain exposed. Freud proposed that the psyche is composed of layers, and that much of what governs our adult behavior stems from conflicts in childhood. Men, particularly those raised in environments where emotional expression was weakness, often guard themselves with logic, distraction, or dominance. Vulnerability disrupts that. It speaks in a language he never learned but instinctively understands. She doesn't dramatize her pain. She names it gently. I used to think love meant proving yourself, she says, her fingers wrapped around the stem of her glass. Like if I just gave enough, they'd stay. I'm unlearning that. He listens differently now. His body leans forward. There's no script for this. No defense ready. Her words bypass his ego and touch the part of him that has also performed for love. Also feared being too much or not enough. She's not trying to be impressive. She's being true. And that truth feels like an invitation. Not into her life, into himself. He thinks of moments he hasn't spoken about in years. The way his mother used to leave the room when she got overwhelmed. How he learned to fix things quickly, quietly, so no one would leave again. No one ever asked how that felt. But something in her presence now is asking, not with words, but with her being. Freud spoke of transference, the projection of internal dynamics onto others. In her vulnerability, he sees echoes of his own. She becomes familiar, not because she mirrors his wounds, but because she does not fear her own. That gives him permission. He begins to speak. Not all at once, but in fragments. I used to feel like I had to protect everyone, he says, even when I didn't know how. She doesn't interrupt, doesn't comfort with cliches. She just listens with her eyes, her breath, her stillness. This too is a touch, a holding without hands. The air between them thickens. Not with tension, but with intimacy. It's not sexual, though it might become that. But for now, it is soul-bearing. Unmasking. The quiet collapse of performance. She knows this space. Has walked it alone for years. The path from pleasing to presence. From projection to personhood. Vulnerability wasn't given to her easily. She fought for it. And now, she offers it with discernment, not desperation. He senses that. He doesn't feel burdened. He feels chosen. Trusted. The way a boy feels when someone finally sees behind his achievements, his strength, his competence, and stays anyway. Later that night, she doesn't ask, "What are we?" She doesn't seek to define or secure. Vulnerability doesn't demand labels. It births connection that speaks before the mind does. When he kisses her, it's different. Less about possession, more about contact. His hand finds her face not out of hunger, but reverence. He isn't taking, he's receiving. The difference is felt in her spine, her pulse. She melts, not out of submission, but surrender. Safe surrender. Earned. The next morning, she doesn't perform coolness. She's honest. I feel tender today. And it's true, vulnerability leaves her soft, open, a little undone. But she doesn't regret it. She knows what was exchanged. He texts her first. Not just to check in. To share. A photo from his childhood. A story about his brother. She touched something deeper than attraction. And now, he wants to keep that door open. What Freud called the return of the repressed is often triggered by experiences that echo buried truths. Her honesty gave his truths permission to rise. And now he is drawn to her not because she completes him, but because she reflects him back to himself. She doesn't offer answers. She doesn't fix. When he confesses, he sometimes feels numb. She just nods. Me too, she says. And they sit there, both naked in their own way, clothed only in presence. This is the emotional touch that rewires a man's patterns. That says, I won't punish you for your softness. I won't shame you for your confusion. I won't disappear when you drop the mask. He doesn't tell his friends everything, but they notice. He talks differently now. Less bravado. More depth. He laughs, but it lands deeper. Something about him is less performative, more present. He still resists sometimes. Emotional regression doesn't vanish in a night. But now there's a reference point. A memory. Of her voice saying, I used to hide. Of her hands not clenching. Of her eyes staying, even when his did not. This is how men begin to attach, not through control or performance, but through being seen in their emotional disarray and not abandoned. Her vulnerability was not weakness. It was anchor. It showed him that intimacy isn't about exposure for the sake of drama. It's about truth. Quiet truth. The kind that makes a man exhale in a way he hasn't in years. The second touch did not need proximity. It only needed her to show up, raw, real, present. He will never forget that moment. Because it wasn't just her story he heard. It was his, too. And that, Freud would say, is when transference becomes transformation. The third touch is the only one that meets the skin, yet even this one, when done right, is not about skin at all. Is the echo that follows a graze of fingertips. The afterimage of a gesture that lingers longer in memory than it lasted in time. This touch does not claim. It awakens. It whispers to the unconscious, you are here. I see you. And I do not fear what lives beneath your armor. He has already felt her absence. He has already tasted her truth. Now when she touches him, it lands. Not as seduction, as recognition. They're walking along the river. The wind is cold enough to raise goosebumps. She doesn't reach for his hand immediately. She waits, senses, speaks. And when she touches his arm, light, purposeful, it says something no sentence could carry. I am not here to take. I am here to meet you. This is instruction number 3. Touch him physically only when your presence is emotionally anchored. Make your body a conduit of safety, not seduction. Freud might say she has synchronized with his unconscious rhythm, that the barrier between ID and ego has softened. Physical touch, when offered with emotional congruence, does not threaten the defenses. It dissolves them. Later, in his apartment, she sits near him, not beside, not on top. Near. She gives him room to want. He reaches first. She allows. Their fingers touch. Then rest. No urgency. No choreography. It's not performance. It's contact. Touch becomes a language here, of attunement, not appetite. When she touches the back of his neck while he talks about his father, she's not soothing a wound. She's acknowledging it. When she brushes his shoulder as she passes, it's not flirtation. It's memory. She's teaching his body that her presence is not conditional. He has known touch as pressure, as reward, as transaction. He has known it as manipulation disguised as affection. What he has not known, until now, is touch as resonance, as echo, as warmth that says, you don't need to be anything else right now. She kisses him that night, but slowly, with stillness between, letting the space breathe, letting the silence between their lips hold weight. Is not a kiss to progress a night, is a kiss to remember a life. And it lands. It reminds him of something he never received, touch that honors the whole self, not just the body. He doesn't want to rush now. He wants to stay here, with her, with this feeling, with this unfamiliar, welcome sense of being met. Freud wrote that the body holds memory, not just of events, but of emotional truths. Her touch stirs something. Not lust, not excitement. Longing. Deep, unfamiliar, and clean. After, she lies next to him, and doesn't ask for validation. She doesn't seek assurance. She doesn't wonder aloud what this means. She simply rests. Present. Unattached. Her breath steady. Her limbs soft. Her eyes closed, but not retreating. He watches her. Not because she is beautiful, though she is, but because she is real. Undemanding. Full. Her body does not pull at him. It holds him, even from inches away. In the morning, she touches his back as he pours coffee. Light. Grounding. As if to say, I am still here. Not for long, but enough. He doesn't want her to leave. Not because he needs her to stay, but because her departure would echo. Her absence would matter now in a way it hadn't before. He realizes this is not just attraction. This is imprinting. She has touched not just his body, but his pattern. She has disrupted the story he tells himself about intimacy, about what it costs, about what it asks. She has given him the opposite. She has offered intimacy as safety, as space, as dignity. This third touch, the physical one, was never the beginning. It was the culmination, because her absence made him want. Her vulnerability made him trust. And now her body, finally, confirms what his unconscious already decided. She is not a risk. She is a refuge, not a mother, not a savior, a mirror, a match, a mystery held with care. In the days that follow, he carries her touch like scent on skin. In meetings, he feels her hand resting on the table between them. In the gym, he remembers her warmth against his back. It isn't distraction. It's grounding. He texts her with no pretense. Thinking about you. Still feeling your hand on my shoulder. She doesn't reply immediately. When she does, it's just, I was thinking about you too. And he believes her. Because her touch was honest. Not hungry. Not strategic. Just full. Present. Enough. They see each other again, of course they do. But it's different now. The physical space between them hums. She doesn't have to touch him. Her presence does. And that is the secret Freud tried to teach in his own way, that true contact, the kind that heals and bonds, begins in the psyche, not the skin. That the most powerful touches are the ones that awaken the unconscious, the ones that dissolve repression with safety, not seduction. She has touched him 3 times. Once with absence, to let him feel his own longing. Once with truth, to let him see himself in hers. and once with her body, to let him remember what safety feels like. Now, when he thinks of her, it's not lust that stirs him. It's reverence. When he speaks of her to friends, it's not conquest. It's curiosity. When he reaches for her again, it's not out of emptiness. It's out of connection. She has not claimed him. She has reflected him. And in that reflection, he sees someone he likes more. Someone braver. Someone softer. Someone ready. He doesn't know what will come next. Neither does she. But what matters now is not the label or the plan. It's the echo of her fingers on his arm, of her silence in his absence, of her truth in the space between their breath. She was never loud, but she was unforgettable, because she touched what no one else dared to.